the Program Director, the Honorable Mr. K. Mapatso, the Deputy Minister of Defense and Military Veterans of the Republic of South Africa, the representative of the Chief of the South African National Defense Force, Lieutenant General Masondo, the Military Ombud, Lieutenant General Retired T.T. Matanzima, the Deputy Military Ombud, Advocate S.T.B. Nkosana, the Deputy Public Prosecutor, the Republic of South Africa, Advocate K. Malunga, distinguished panelists, chiefs of services and divisions, members of the diplomatic corps, academics, NGO leaders and policy strategists, ombudsmen in your different portfolios, distinguished guests, staff members of the Office of the Ombud, of the Military Ombud, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. Firstly, Honorable Minister, the Commissioner for Peace and Security, Ambassador Smail Shegu, apologizes for his inability to attend this very important occasion, and thanks you in particular and the Minister of Defense of the Republic of South Africa for the invitation to the African Union Commission to be an effective participant in the development and enhancement of this activity. He is unable to attend due to other commitments, and he has sent me to represent him by delivering a statement from the African Union Commission with regards to the views of the African Union Commission and indeed the African Union membership to the development of the Ombud Office and the relevant institutions that are associated with this process. Program Director, I'm happy that you got us to sing the national anthem. From where I come from in the African Union, and my responsibilities entail that I sing the 55 national anthems of the African Union member states. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the AU Commissioner for Peace and Security, Ambassador Shegi, it is an honor for me to address you on this Military Ombud Annual Symposium under the theme, The Role of Oversight over the Armed Forces in the Contemporary African Context. Allow me to take this opportunity to congratulate you and your endeavors that resulted in the hosting of the first Africa Day Symposium on 31 October 2018 under the theme, Advancing the Narrative of the Oversight over the Armed Forces in Africa. The symposium emphasized on effective oversight and covered some of the critical elements as follows: emphasizing on the creation of oversight over the intelligence services, recognizing the importance of consultative oversight of regional mechanisms and forces versus the African Union, ECOWAS, SADC, the East African Standby Force, and the North African Regional Entity. Applauding the reform of the Ombudsman mandates, particularly institutional independence and direct accountability to Parliament, among other key issues. Honorable Minister, I also wish to applaud the South African Military Ombud, which is the only organization of this caliber in the African continent, for its commitment to host and facilitate discussions and advocacy on good practices regarding the importance of armed forces oversight to enhance capacity, integrity, accountability, and the respect of human rights within the armed forces in Africa. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, as you are all aware, the dictates of liberal democracy poses that there be civilian control of the military, which entails that the ultimate responsibility for a country's strategic decision-making be in the hands of the civilian political leadership, rather than professional military officers. One classic example of this is the quotation by Mao Zedong stating that our principle is that the party commands the gun and the gun must never be allowed to command the party, reflecting the primacy of the Communist Party of the Republic of China, of the People's Republic of China, and other relevant institutions as decision makers in Marxist, then Leninist and Maoist theories of democratic centralism. Honorable Minister, the above resonates with the principle of security governance, which reiterates that the armed forces have to act under civilian control, ensuring that democratic control and oversight mechanisms are enhanced and be functional. Therefore, the role of oversight over the armed forces is at the core of the African Union's peace and security architecture, APSA, and is firmly grounded in Article 4 of the Constitutive Act of the African Union, which emphasizes on, first, respect for democratic principles, human rights, the rule of law, and governance. Second, promotion of social justice to ensure balanced economic development. Third, respect for the sanctity of human life, condemnation and rejection of impunity and political assassination, acts of terrorism, and subversive activities. Fourth, condemnation and rejection of unconstitutional changes of governments. Furthermore, the Lome Convention, the 2000 Lome Declaration on the Unconstitutional Change of Government, and the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, which strongly condemns any unconstitutional change of government and commits member states of the African Union to the respect of the rule of law, democratic principles, and human rights, are further instruments that enhance the issue of oversight enshrined in the African Union's statutes. In this context, the democratic control and oversight of the armed forces is paramount. The AU advises member states to commit themselves to strengthening instruments for democratic oversight of the security sector. These oversight instruments may be country-specific, whilst seeking to promote and uphold good governance principles, the rule of law, respect for the legal framework, including human rights and gender equality. In this regard, and as provided by the African Union Policy Framework on Security Sector Reform, SSR, in Section D6, which I quote, states, the SSR refers to the process by which countries formulate or reorient the policies, structures, and capacities of institutions and groups engaged in the security sector in order to make them more effective, efficient, and responsive to democratic control and to the security and justice needs of the peoples of Africa. The following four oversight mechanisms, therefore, need to be established by member states in furtherance of democratic control and oversight of the security sector. First, the executive control of the security sector. Member states are expected to encourage and support their heads of state and government members of cabinet and other coordinating officials that assist the executive in the execution of its functions to direct the security sector as provided for in the respective constitutions of African member states and other legislation, in keeping with the spirit of separation of powers among the various branches of government. In this regard, the AU emphasizes that the main focus of the executive will be to provide political and policy direction to security institutions. The executive will also ensure that the security sector adheres to and implements its mandates, roles, and functions, and have the necessary operational resources in a manner that promotes human security. The executive will also be accountable for national security decision-making in keeping with the national legislation, in addition to regional, continental, and international legal framework. Second, the legislative oversight of the security sector. The African Union advises member states to encourage and support their legislators to oversee the work of the security sector by holding the executive accountable for the mandates, roles, and missions of the security sector. Additionally, the legislator will make and approve laws, rules, and regulations of the respective security sector institutions, and will establish and mandate specialized committees to exercise oversight on behalf of the legislator and regularly report thereto. In furtherance of continental integration processes, relevant regional bodies, including the Pan-African Parliament and regional parliaments, where applicable, will support national legislators in overseeing the security sector by providing common normative standards, including as contained in the policy of the security sector. In this regard, the relevant regional bodies will enhance parliamentary capacity to play a watchdog role, particularly with respect to regional peace support operations and the related security mechanism. Judicial control and oversight. It is aimed within the African Union context at curtailing the use of intrusive powers of the security sector without constitutional and legislative justification. Member states are therefore advised to provide for national legislation to prohibit the limitation of the rights and freedoms of citizens by the security sector through the use of intrusive operational methods. No member of the security sector will act in contravention of any national and international law, including international human rights and humanitarian law. Those found in violation or abuse of these laws will be held accountable. Where a civilian is tried before military courts for military offenses, such a civilian will be tried in accordance with the rule and principles of the natural justice. The independent oversight of civil institution, in keeping with the spirit of the Constitutive Act of the African Union, which, among other things, underscores the need for peace, security, and stability and human rights based on people's participation, inclusion, and ownership of the democratic processes. Member states are encouraged to set up appropriate independent oversight instruments, such as Inspector Generals and Ombudsman institutions for the security sector through national legislation. The legislation needs to empower these civil institutions to investigate complaints from the public and security service members, and to monitor compliance of the security sector with applicable national and international law, including, as I've already mentioned, humanitarian and human rights laws. Member states are encouraged to provide space and empower traditional and community-based oversight in the recognition of African traditional authorities in a manner consistent with the policies that have been defined. Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in addition, the AU policy framework highlights this crucial role of civil society organizations in democratic security sector oversight. The AU values the role of civil society in enhancing peace and security on the African continent. The African Union recognizes the role of civil society in the activities of the Union as enshrined in Article 4C of the Constitutive Act of the African Union, which encourages participation of the African peoples in the activities of the Union, and the relevant sections of the protocol also relating to the establishment of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union. This is further concretized in the African Union's conclusions on mechanism for interaction between the Peace and Security Council of the African Union and civil society organizations in the promotion of peace and security and stability on the African continent, now popularly referred to as the Livingstone Formula at the AU Commission. This policy is implemented through the Citizens and Diaspora Directorate in collaboration with the Economic, Social, and Cultural Council at the African Union Commission. More specifically, Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, Section H of the AU Policy Framework on SSR is dedicated to the role of the civil society in security sector reform. The SSR framework calls on African civil society organizations to perform the following. First, promote dialogue among the different sectors of society on security issues as confidence-building measures. Second, actively participate in the formulation, monitoring, and evaluation of security sector reform policies and relations and legislation in member states. Third, promote peace and security and stability in Africa. Promote and defend a culture of good governance, democratic principles, participation, human rights and freedoms, as well as social justice in the security sector. Promote and defend gender-based practices in the security sector. Conduct research and provide training on security-related issues. Advocate and create awareness on security issues, and in particular on security budget analysis and monitoring and evaluation of the security policy and the practices. Finally, to promote the implementation of the African Union security sector reform policy at the national, regional, and continental level. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is also important to highlight that the AU enhances the role of oversight of the armed forces by encouraging member states emerging from conflicts to undergo security sector reform. The security sector reform within this context constitutes the main components of, I quote, the African Union policy on post-conflict reconstruction and development, adopted by the African Union Executive Council in Banjul, Gambia in June 2006. The adoption of the African Union policy on post-conflict reconstruction and development was done after noting a deficit of security governance, which constitutes the main root cause of most political and armed conflicts in Africa. This underpins the inclusion and the highlight of SSR provisions in the text of several peace agreements and political settlements across the African continent. This is to strengthen the role of oversight of the security sector. It is therefore important that the post-conflict reconstruction and development policy of the African Union in this regard is noted, and as it gives priority to the re-establishment or establishment and strengthening of the capacity of the security institutions, including defense, police, and prisons and correctional services, and intelligence services, through designing and implementing related policies. It also calls on countries emerging from conflicts to create appropriate and effective oversight bodies for the security sector, including parliamentary committees, national ombudspersons, etc. This priority within the African Union Commission and the African Union member states led the African Union towards the development of the African Union Policy Framework for the Security Sector Reform, endorsed by the 20th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Heads of State of the Union, held in Addis Ababa in January 2013. Honorable Minister, furthermore, on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the African Union, of the OAU, later now the African Union, the Assembly of the Union adopted a solemn declaration in which, I quote, "It undertakes to bequeath an Africa of conflicts, not to bequeath an Africa of conflicts to the younger generations, and set the objective of silencing the guns in Africa by 2020, which you have already alluded to. And the security sector agenda is therefore part and parcel of the AU strategy of silencing the guns by 2020. Honorable Minister, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, the aim of the African Union policy on security sector reform is to provide a continental policy framework on SSR that provides the AU, regional economic community, regional economic mechanisms, member states and other stakeholders with the harmonized guidelines to implement programs. The components of the sector vary according to each national context, and the AU recognizing that the ombuds institutions are among the main justice and rule of law institutions and is part of the security components depending on the country's specific requirements. Since 2013, the AU has engaged with the member states in their national SSR initiatives or their regional organizations taking the lead. Such are the cases in the AU engagements with Madagascar, the Central African Republic, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, the Gambia, and many other countries. The AU establishment has ensured the enhancement of capacity of oversight mechanisms within these countries, particularly parliamentary, civil society organizations, executives, and other institutions of the armed forces and other pillars of the police, gendarmerie, intelligence, prisons, and correctional service in varying forms. In Africa, it is very important. It is a very important development, and we are aware of the various forums that have been undertaken, including the Second Africa Forum on SSR, hosted by the Commission of the African Union in Addis Ababa from the 22nd to the 24th of October in 2018. Honorable Minister, the forum was convened within the structure of the AU policy framework, and the theme was promoting the continental agenda on security, justice, and development. The objective of the forum was to take stock of developments in Africa and to map a way forward for member states, regional bodies, and international partners. It aimed to offer a platform for inclusive dialogue, to consider success stories and the unique opportunities to accelerating action towards the vision of silencing the guns by 2020, particularly in light of the contemporary security challenges confronting the African continent. Honorable Minister, in the final analysis, one of the main recommendations regarding the security oversight is the need for concrete steps to be taken at the level of the African Union Commission to fully explore the role of the Pan-African Parliament as an important entry point to engage parliamentarians in member states and established good practices in this particular area. This forum is critical in that regard. In this respect, it is emphasized that legislation and codes of governing disclosure of information by security institutions should be reviewed as required to improve transparency and accountability to oversight bodies and the wider public. In conclusion, Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for the opportunity given to the African Union Commission to speak at this opening session of this very important occasion. I reiterate that the African Union and South Africa Military Ombudsman common interests on the oversight of the armed forces and look forward to further collaboration in designing and implementing defense and security oversight in line with the African Union Agenda 2063 principles. Thank you for your attention. Siyabonga. Thank you.